We're live. So, good afternoon and welcome to another Conex Live event. Today I'm joined by Peter Spiby. Good afternoon, Peter.
Hi there. Hi, Angela.
So, Peter, we wanted to talk about FactoryIQ.
Yeah.
This obviously has been something that yourself and Adam Payne has developed. Unfortunately, Adam can't join us today, but it would be really good, I guess, to hear, how did FactoryIQ come about?
Yeah. I'd met Adam over the years at various networking events. We're an IT company, and Adam obviously is very much focused on the manufacturing sector and various techniques and methodologies, lean and so on, and consulting into the manufacturing sector. And he developed tools over the years, first paper-based, then Excel-based. And the way he describes it was he wanted to just sort of dump what was in his brain into my brain and develop an online system or a modern system to provide the kind of functionality that he was getting from this paper-based and then Excel-based systems. So we worked initially for a print company. One of their issues was that they got 7 or 8 machines. They might have 10 or so jobs on the go at any one time, but they're having trouble keeping track of where jobs were within the system, where there might be slack within the system. So their machines sat idle sometimes. Other machines were busy all of the time, but they got no real handle on this. And Adam had started to do some work with them, looking at OEE and so on, using these Excel spreadsheets. So we worked together as this first project to develop a system to allow them to schedule work through the factory. So with FactoryIQ, they put in the jobs, and then each job might be made up of several stages. So in the print environment, you would have the printing the material, then cutting it, then binding it, and so on. So we developed a system that's very easy for them to use, that could be used on phones or tablets. So the operators didn't need any special equipment. They could literally get their phone and say, right, I've started on this job, I've started the printing, then the people in the cutting or the folding section know that it's only going to be a couple of hours before they'll need to do then their bit on it. Whereas before, it was bits of paper being passed backwards and forwards, or emails or phone calls, and they're a 24/7 operation. So when I met them, the production manager was really frazzled because he'd get up in the morning, there might have been a problem in the middle of the night, and the first he knows is when he got into the office. Whereas with this, he could get up, just have a quick look on his phone, have there been any problems, because the system would also alert people to problems during the production cycle. But also when they were putting the jobs on, it became clear very quickly, because it's quite a graphical interface that we've got. So we show a sort of workflow, almost like a planner of what's happening across the various resources in your factory. You can see very clearly, very visually, where there are gaps or where a machine is being very heavily utilised. So even seeing that, they then realise, oh, well, the folding machine is free for a couple of days next week. Let's get the sales guys out there, see if there is a job that just needs folding doing that. So they settled down with that. We developed some scheduling algorithms to make sure that the jobs would pass through the factory in the most optimum route. That was just before the pandemic. Then Adam started working with an engineering company, and this was then on a much bigger scale. So we've been working with, as I say, about 10 jobs or so across 7 or 8 machines. Now we've got 40 odd machines with 200 jobs on the go. And when I first went into this company, again, it was mainly driven by bits of paper. Yes, they got SAP, so all their job costings and so on, all that was sussed, but they were looking to do some scheduling. They'd spoken to some SAP consultants about that, and the sort of pricing that they were discussing was, ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
So they're looking on the shop floor. As I say, there's lots of bits of paper being passed around, and it was hard to get an overall picture of where things were in the factory. So this became a real stress test then for our algorithms.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah. And instead of the jobs manually being put on, which is what was happening with the print job, what we did with the engineering company was we developed an interface that would pull the information directly in from SAP. So as soon as a new job went onto SAP, it would then get pulled into FactoryIQ.
Okay.
our algorithms would then take that, work out what, again, the best route through the factory. So before, it was very much a case of, a lot of it was run by instinct, really. Who's our important customers, rough idea of due dates, and trying to figure out the best order in which to do jobs. Whereas if we actually take an empirical approach to this, say, right, okay, we know when the machines are free, we know what follows what in this list, we know what the due dates are for these 200 jobs. Just trying to get all that lot in your head at one time, and
Yes.
finger in the air only goes so far. Whereas this would give an empirical, right, this is when this job will be finished. Obviously, the real world would mean that those jobs aren't going to be finished when we predict they're going to be, but the system adapts as you go along. So again, operators of the machines, the company put a tablet in each work area. So before an operator starts on a job, they go to that tablet, they clock that job on. If there's a problem, they might hit the stoppage button to let them know there's a problem. And then everybody knows there's a problem. So even those up on the top floor, as well as the shop floor, can look. There'll be a little flashing alert, we're out of material on the Citizen L12 or whatever. And they can deal with that situation. But other work can carry on around that, and it doesn't stop the whole factory. There's enough information there for people to then be able to work around that. And again, you can see all those issues with capacity. So where there's slacks, or where there's too little, where there's constraints in capacity, and it enables then the organisation to plan in terms of either buying new resources or getting work in to exploit the spare capacity that they might have. So that's how it developed at that point. So that was through the pandemic. So that was quite challenging for us, but we got the algorithms working well. It was useful again because during the pandemic, not everybody was in the office. All this information that was previously paper-based was now available online. So anybody anywhere had secure access to the system from either their laptop or their phone or their tablet. So nobody needed to be out of the loop.
I think that's quite important, because I'm a great advocate of paperless. Bits of paper, they get lost, and I've heard of so many manufacturing companies, particularly smaller manufacturers, who that's how they run their business, on bits of paper. And it's not a good process. It's not a good way to run a business, is it?
No.
And even sort of, I remember working for an insurance broker years ago, paper files. Somebody took the file away, everybody else would be hunting around for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you see that all the time still now,
Yeah.
And some companies try and move on from that. And, it's very admirable that they might think, okay, we'll use Excel spreadsheets. And then they start hitting the same problems with that. People then take a copy of the Excel spreadsheet, they make their changes, and it's out of date with the other person. So with a system like FactoryIQ, you've got one version of the truth. And it's, mentioning that about bits of paper that go about the place, there are things that you can't avoid. Well, you sort of think, I can't avoid having these bits of paper, drawings, for instance, or safety notices and so on. One of the things that we've built into the system is the ability to store documents. Yeah. So you've got one version of the truth. So there will be the official drawing for that product, or the official health and safety notice for that piece of equipment. And if that changes, then everybody's using that one copy of it.
Yeah, and that makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Can I just ask you? I mean, obviously, when you went into the first factory to set up FactoryIQ, I mean, it must have been a huge learning curve for you and Adam, and then having to then scale it up to the next customer. So it's obviously developed quite a lot since then.
It's we like a challenge, but we're quite agile as well in terms of development. So we went in. The great thing working with a print company with a smaller setup was good, because it was easy to get a handle on the whole process. Actually, once we'd spent a little bit of time working on that system, we got a real good idea of how that company worked and how the processes that were working FactoryIQ. So then moving to the engineering company was just a case really of scaling up the processes that we'd built into the system before. But then that does start to throw in other things that we might not have considered beforehand. So, for instance, the print company was a 24/7 operation, so we didn't have to worry about machine downtime or anything. The assumption was 24/7. If a job takes 15 hours, then if we start it at midday, it's going to finish at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, obviously, a factory where people are working, it doesn't work like that. So we had to then factor in things like lunch times, night times. Some machines might be lights out, so you can configure that. Others may be operated, so they need to. They're only going to operate during business hours, as it were. So we enhanced the system to include that. Then there was the reporting that we have from there as well. So both companies were very keen to get management information, because they would have started their conversation initially actually with Adam around the whole OEE manufacturing productivity side of things. So we developed reporting and alerts in the system. But what we found was that although operators will start and stop the jobs to fit around what it is that they're doing, it doesn't necessarily reflect what's actually happening with those machines in terms of utilisation. So to give an example, you might have an operator who's responsible for 3 machines, and it's a bit like spinning plates, so they'll start machine 1, they'll be working on machine 2. By the time they get to machine 3, machine 1 has stopped. Okay, fair enough. They'll come back to that in 20 minutes and say, oh, that job stopped. So they'll record on FactoryIQ that it stopped. We don't know that job actually finished 10 or 20 minutes before. So one of the things that we've developed to deal with that situation are actual machine monitoring boxes. Right. So these are very simple, cost-effective devices that you can attach to any electrical machinery. It doesn't do anything clever with CNC machines. It literally, so it's taking a CNC lathe as an example, rather than connecting into the logic of that machine, it literally looks at the current that's going into the spindle with a little current clamp, not invasive at all. And we can see then when that machine is starting and stopping. So we can then have a very accurate picture of the actual machine utilisation. And that's always a real eye-opener for a company when they see that.
Yes, I can imagine, yeah. Is it, are you able to give us a quick demo of FactoryIQ?
Unfortunately, I don't have one prepared at the moment. I know I did mention that I would have, and I've been a bit busy with something else this morning, so I don't have that.
That's no problem. So I know you mentioned SAP earlier. I mean, are you hoping to compete with SAP, or what's how you're hoping that this will develop in the future?
We don't see ourselves as a competitor with the SAPs of this world. They deal with a whole load of other areas that we don't. So the whole finance side of things, bill of materials, we don't deal with that. We're literally to do with managing the manufacturing process itself. So keeping a tab on that and how productive are your machines. So we see ourselves as in that niche of companies that have got something like SAP, but they want to do that a little bit more. They want to do the scheduling, they want to do the machine monitoring, but they've already got those other areas covered.
Yes.
But if they were to stick with SAP for machine monitoring or scheduling, it's going to cost them an awful lot, not just financially, but also in terms of disruption and the amount of lead time in getting those up and running. And I see on some of the Conex discussions, there is a discussion starting to develop now around, do you actually need an ERP? If you've got a good accounting system like Xero, for instance, you've got a good CRM, you've got your own system for developing your bills and materials, then we are then just another piece in that jigsaw of a holistic IT system. Yeah. So we see ourselves as complementing existing systems. We're not looking to go out there and be another SAP. And I think there's a very big market for certainly things like CNC shops, a company that's got 15, 20 machines. You think of the capital investment in there or the leasing investment that you might have in that. All the time those machines aren't running, you're not making money, you're not getting a return on that investment. And for a very small cost, a system like ours will give you that clear evidence of how is that machine being used. Is it 70%, 50%? You're probably going to find out it's well under 40%, whereas you would be expecting it to be sort of 60, 70%. So when you've got that as a baseline, you get a system like ours, you put it in, you see right, it's got 40% utilisation at the moment. What do we need to do to get that to 50? You get it to 50. What do we need to get to 60? And very quickly, you've got a massive return on investment, and you're then justifying your initial capital outlay in your actual CNC machines, and then in a system like ours.
Okay, brilliant stuff. There's been a few comments, just looking at the comments that we've had from people watching. Simon Davies says we introduced a machine monitoring system in Molson Coors where as soon as the machine PLC went into a stop state, the downtime would start recording.
Yes.
The stop would then record onto the downtime to give accurate data. There was also an option for the operator to add extra lines of data to help root cause analysis.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that's the FactoryIQ can do that, yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to tie into the logic controller of the machine. Literally, it's talking to the cable in the machine that's doing the relevant bit of work. So on a lathe, obviously the spindle drive, but any kind of machine, anything that's involved in the actual operation of that machine, we pick up the fact that the current is running there. So yes, we know when it's stopped, and with the tablets, the operators can then record the reason why it stopped.
Yeah.
And then further down the line, you can then do some root cause analysis. But we can also build automated alerts into the system as well, so that if there is a stoppage and that it meets certain criteria, it will then either automatically email or text the relevant people to let them know that this happened. And I know with some lean and just-in-time environments that Adam's worked with in the past, that kind of escalation actually is very quick. So as soon as there's a problem on the production line, within 30 seconds you expect level 1 to be dealt with. If it gets to 2 minutes, then it gets raised right up to see what the problem is and to get it sorted. Yeah,
definitely. Steve Murphy, let's have a look. Hang on a minute, what did he post about? He was at a lean manufacturing show in Glasgow. There was a small company that had developed an OEE during COVID and was now selling it. I told him I had OEE software and knew another business that had great OEE software. The daftest thing is, if 1% of UK factories suddenly decided to use this type of software, we would all be overrun with too much work to do. That's quite an interesting one, Steve.
Yeah. It'd be a nice problem to have, Steve.
It would, definitely.
But the thing is, the problem with the economy at the moment, and has been for a while, is productivity. And it's such a simple way to crack that productivity nut. We don't profess to say we can do the whole productivity problem, but you only have to increase by small percentages to make a massive difference to this economy.
Yeah, exactly. And so much better than using bits of paper, Peter.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And the other thing is, of course, it's recording this information over a period of time. So ad infinitum. So 2 years down the line, you can look back and say, right, how are we doing in 2019-20? How are we doing the year before? And so on. So you can see that, and hopefully see that progression over time.
Yeah, great stuff. So I guess it's been lovely talking to you, Peter. And I'm sure if anybody wants to know any more, that they can connect with you in the Conex Portal. And I'm sure you're happy to have a chat or get them to private message you about FactoryIQ.
Always happy to have a chat and give up. I should have had a demo ready today. As I say, it's been one of those mornings. But we'll put some links out there, Adam or I, with a link to a demo. But always happy to give a one-to-one demo anyway. Yeah.
Smashing. Thanks for your time, Peter, and great to talk to you.
And you. Thanks. Have a good weekend, everybody.